Miranda received 2 It's in the Bag donations while accessing domestic violence support services. Those simple bags filled with essentials and care arrived right when she needed them the most. They gave her strength, helped her feel seen, and reminded her she was worthy of love and dignity, even in her darkest moments. Welcome, Miranda.
Hi.
We always start with a would you rather question. Would you rather get petrol or get period products?
I'll get petrol. I need petrol to get to work, to get the kids around, unfortunately I would have to choose petrol.
How old were you when you got your first period?
I was 14.
Had your mum told you about what was going to happen to you?
Yeah, I knew. School had told me, and my mum, we've got a great relationship, so she had been able to tell me. I'd always told my mum and my grandmother that I always wanted my period, but then they always went, what? And I'm like, no, wrong wording. I always wanted to know when I would get my period. I never wanted to get my period when I was at school or if I'd gone to the movies and I was lucky enough that when I did get my first period, I was at home. So I was in a safe place and I didn't have to, have the shock and the shame of having blood on something or...
That's like winning the period lotto, we'd have to call that, wouldn't it? We, through our bloody big survey, can see that more than 60% of women said that they didn't feel like they were adequately educated on menstruation. And they, grade 5 taught you about periods?
Grade 6. Grade 6, they put the girls in one section, the boys in the other section, and the girls were taught about menstruation and that what's going to happen to your body and about pads or tampons, and wasn't a big in-depth thing, but yes, we did get sat down and spoken to about it.
Right. I never, ever remember hearing about periods at any form of education. Tell me about yourself. You're so interesting, right? So brave. Tell me about what home looked like for you as a little girl.
As a little girl, my sister, my mum and dad. Unfortunately, my situation, my dad was violent, and so growing up I saw things that other people shouldn't and wouldn't see, and so when I actually entered a relationship that was very similar, the red flags weren't so red for me. They might have only just been a little bit pink or a little bit off-white, but to someone else who hadn't been in those situations, they'd be like, whoa, back it off, don't enter that, leave it. But I did have a happy childhood, and I still have an amazing mum who's very, very supportive, and an amazing sister.
Your mum obviously went through some domestic violence when you and your sister were young. How did that impact you?
Red flags weren't so red for me. So I didn't see that a smashed door was a big thing. That just meant that a guy was angry and he just threw the door and it, smashed the wall or something, or that there was a hole in the wall. Oh, well, that was just because he was a little bit angry. I learnt that the turning of the knob, that was one massive thing, that when Dad turned the knob, depending on how hard he turned it or how softly, we knew when to keep our mouth shut, how well to walk on the eggshells, how to not aggravate him, to not upset him. I saw and I heard too much, and my mum didn't know until she was a lot older of how much my sister and I heard and how much we actually knew. How badly it affected both of us. I'm the older, but yeah, just because you're not in the same room and you don't physically see something doesn't mean that you don't feel it, doesn't mean that you don't know the tension, the tone of a voice, how scared my mum was, how worried she was. You feel it. Any child does.
Did your dad ever hurt you or your sister?
That was the turning point for Mum, the reason why she left, because he did try to hurt me. I wasn't fed up with what he was doing to Mum, and I vocalised it and I told him, and he didn't like that. And I didn't realise how bad the situation was until it was only 3 or 4 years ago when I was actually speaking about it to my sister and my mum, and they both turned to me and said, yeah, but he strangled you, but you turned purple. You weren't breathing and we couldn't get him off you. And I sort of was quite shocked, because I remember when it happened. I can remember where I was, I can remember where he was, I can remember that I couldn't get up, but I didn't realise it was that bad. And They both looked at me in shock because they didn't realise that I hadn't, understood how bad the situation was.
Well, when you go through such trauma like that, you kind of block it out of your memory, right? And it's not until certain times later on in your life when people will say something or ask a question that memory comes flooding back, right? At what stage then did your mum leave?
So I was, sort of 16. My dad left. We were lucky enough to be left in the house. My mum was left with all the debt, but we were left in the house, and my dad, luckily enough, he sort of ended up leaving and not making too much of a fuss, or would still ask mum for money and things like that, but kind of sort of left us. And then my sister and I, and you saw him sort of a few times, a handful of times, and it was really hard for both of us because we just felt like he didn't want us or didn't need us. He has his own mental health issues that's never been fully addressed. So, and alcoholism was how he dealt with it. I still missed him. He's not in my life anymore. I haven't seen him for years, but I still do miss that chunk of my life that I don't have. But I don't dwell over it, and I don't think about it all the time. It's maybe once or twice a year that something will happen or someone will ask something and say, oh, where's your dad? Or recently someone asked my daughter, where's your grandfather? And she sort of went, oh, I sort of went, what do you mean grandfather? Because they don't see either of their grandfathers. And it was just that sort of moment you go, oh yeah, that's right, I do have a dad. He's just not part of my life.
But it's really interesting that you would have lived a life of that family violence and then it happened again to you, right? It's so interesting to me to find that women that were brought up in homes where there was violence seem to replicate it again when they're older. And that's probably the first time I've ever heard somebody say the red flags didn't really look like red flags, that potentially somebody who grew up in a house where, when you were talking about how fast they would even open the door, the ferocity of opening a doorknob and the fear it would put into you brought me back to, oh my God, that makes sense, right? But to somebody who didn't grow up in a home like that and only grow up with joy and love would not understand that. So yeah, the red flag thing is so far down the line that a red flag is really only when somebody hits you, right?
And I didn't realise that domestic violence at the time, I just thought it was physical violence. I didn't realise it was mental, psychological, financial, and I had all of that because I didn't own the car, my phone, money. I was able to have a little account, which unfortunately I know of a lot of women in domestic violence situations where you have a little account and you try and put a little bit of money in, and that went on my lawyer for the kids like that. It was gone in like 2 court dates. But to know that domestic violence isn't just a physical thing, it is so much more than that. And the physical stuff can go away, like bruises and things, they go away. But the psychological things, they're the things that stay, unfortunately, and you're still dealing with 10 years later or however long it is.
Did your mum, your sister, your grandmother, your friends ever pick up on red flags for you and try to have those conversations with you about your partner?
My sister more than my mum, which was quite interesting because my mum throughout my entire life has been able to pick every single person and say, that one's a bit shifty or just watch out. Unfortunately, he did such a good job that she did see red flags, but not as much. And my sister and brother-in-law definitely saw more things and would pick up on things, and in the end he would try to push me away from so much in my life. Unfortunately for him, he could never break that bond between my mum and my sister and my brother-in-law, but he tried because whenever they picked up on something and said something to me, then he'd turn it around and say, oh, well, they're trying to do this to you, or it's their fault, or well, they did this and they did that. And so out of all of the manipulation and the psychological stuff, he managed to not be able to break through with my mum and my sister and my brother-in-law. But everything else he sort of managed to slowly, or it just got too hard that I'd just give in, because it was not worth the fight, wasn't worth the effort and the trauma of going through something as little as asking, have you paid the bill, or where were you last night, or did you go to work today? It just wasn't worth it. So I just would stop asking or stop wanting to know the answers to things.
Tell me about how you received an It's in the Bag donation.
So my ex, I tried to leave him 4 times, and this was the 4th and final time. There was domestic violence the whole way through, but it just got worse and worse. And then, pardon the pun, but the icing on the cake was that he was then addicted to ice, which made it even more dangerous and even more hard to leave. So the 4th time I had to leave, we were in a room together and he just wouldn't let me leave, and he actually barricaded me in the room, and my brother-in-law was with me at the time, and he told me, you know, if you need me, call out. And I'm right on the other side of the room. I said, I'm sure we'll be fine. But he wouldn't let me go. He blocked the door, and he was not in a good mental state of mind. And my brother-in-law tried to get through the door and he couldn't. And then he pretty much broke the door to get me out and had to physically fight my ex to get out of the room. And that was nearly 10 years ago. It's coming up to the 10th anniversary soon, if that's what you want to call it. And my brother-in-law just didn't even question it. He just said, get in the car, you and the kids are coming to live with us. Didn't ask my sister, not that my sister would have said no, but just went, no, that's it, you're coming in. My brother-in-law has just been an absolute saving grace for our entire family. And he loves my kids, has always looked out for them, still does. So we moved in with my sister and brother-in-law, because otherwise I had no house. I ended up losing my car, my phone. Everything was under my ex's name because it was better that way, and you know, it looked better on paper, and everything was put into his name, which was sort of lucky in a way because I didn't end up with any of that debt. But I ended up with nothing except 2 children. So I had to leave, and then I was put in touch with so many different police and lawyers, and they put me through to an organisation called CASA, which has now changed its name, but it was for domestic violence and sexual assault. And I had walked in one day with my counsellor, and there was a room with about 20 bags, and she said, pick one of the bags out. And I sort of didn't understand what this bag was for, and she said, it's an organisation that one of the bags is for you. So I picked out a bag that I liked, but I didn't open it because I went and had my counselling session, and I didn't open it until I got home, and it was filled, like absolutely filled with period products, beauty products, little bags, little tote bags and things. And I was just blown away because I had my kids, but I didn't have much of anything else. I was living in a safe environment, but this bag was mine and those products were mine. And my daughter, who was 8 at the time, who's now nearly 18, she even remembers, I asked her the other day, do you remember that first bag that I got? And she said, oh yes. She goes, I remember that you got this amazing strawberry face mask in it. And I went, what? And she goes, it smelt so good and I've never been able to find it since. And I said, really? And she goes, yeah, I remember that. And I thought, that was 10 years ago. And for an 8-year-old to remember that must have been really exciting for her to have gotten something out of it as well. And I still have, it's a little bag with swans on it. It's nothing big, it's nothing fancy, but through 3 house moves, I've still got it. It's nothing big to anyone else. It's just a tiny little tote bag, but for me at the time, I was moving from my sisters and brother-in-laws to my mum's on the weekend to give them a reprieve from 2 little ones and myself. And we were always living in bags, going from house to house, back and forth, school bags, work bags. And that little bag was something for me to just chuck my toothbrush and my things in, and one less thing to have to worry about on the scheme of having to worry about everything all the time.
How did that bag make you feel?
She actually did mention that, the organisation have packed it, and, women have packed it. These are people, women that have never met me, will never meet me, won't know that I've got what they've packed. And for such a dark time in my life to know that someone else has gone out of their way to do something for me, that I could just see that there was humanity still left in a world that at the time was so dark, and I was having to deal with so much that was not happy, that was not bright, that was not sunny, that this little, ray of hope, knowing that someone else had done something for me was, amazing.
What would you say to the person who put that bag together? You'll never meet her, and maybe, or him, she'll probably never see this, but what would you say to her?
Thank you. Thank you for doing something it's not a big thing. It's putting a few things in a bag, but it's such a big difference to the person, myself, on the other end, that receives something in a time when there's not much to look forward to, not much that's good. And to receive something that is, packed with positivity, with, goodness in mind, not all the horrible things you're dealing with.
So I met you when I was asked to go and speak at Geelong at an event. Did you know that I was going to be there that day?
No, I didn't. I didn't know. And when you started talking, and then you were talking about the bags, and then I was with my mum at that event, and I sort of went, that's the bags that I got.
And then you were just sitting there, and I could just see you welling up, right?
It was very, very emotional. It was, and hearing your story and what you've done and everything, it was just absolutely amazing. And to know that, again, something so little in the scheme of things affected me so much, and 10 years later to meet the person who started that 10 years ago herself was, it was huge.
Well, it was an absolute pleasure of mine. But I remember standing there speaking, telling this story, and you and your mum were kind of sitting in the middle. So I kind of always try to look, but I couldn't get my eyes off you because I could tell it was hitting your heart, but I didn't know why. And then when you came and introduced yourself and said that you'd received a bag, oh my God, I never get to meet the people that this work gets to help. So I'm so grateful I met you. I'm so grateful that you shared your story, because it is, people don't think that women that look like you would receive a bag, right? They just think it's somebody else, and it's people who've fled domestic violence or experienced family violence or homelessness. They just look like us. They're just us. We're all just people, and there's a way that we can have that piece of kindness that allows you to feel the way that you should have felt in the first place. So I'm so grateful that I met you that day.
I'm very grateful to have met you.
You received a second bag like the year after, so you were still getting some help through that service, yeah?
Yep, I was still going through a lot and having to go through the court system, criminal court for him, and child custody, because he put that in place as well. So I was dealing with all of that, and counselling again, and counselling for the kids. They were court ordered for counselling. I had counselling, school stuff, all the kids' sports, their friends, just everything.
Did you have your own house by then, or were you still flipping between your mums and your sisters?
I was still flipping.
That must have been really hard to not have your own. Like, you weren't homeless, which we can appreciate, but when you don't have that safety net of, this is mine if I want to walk around without my bra and undies on, that's like, like we all deserve that piece of our own place, right? When did you move on from those two homes to your own home?
I still don't have my own home. I live with my mum. I don't want her to be alone, and she was also my help with two kids. Because having
it's generational living though, right? At least you've got.
Yes, and the kids just do their own thing, and they come and go. Now they're much older, and we also lived with my grandmother, so it was 4 generations in one house, which was not very common for white Australians. So it was.
Takes a tribe though, right?
Yeah.
When you received your second bag, would you have received a Christmas present otherwise?
Yeah, not really. No, I've never dated again.
You deserve to be loved though.
I struggle with trusting, and and I haven't been looking actively. If someone came into my life and they were there, and maybe, but other than that, no.
You deserve to be loved. You're so beautiful and you're so kind. Do you feel like your kids have been affected by what's happened to you and the family over the last 10 years?
Oh, they've definitely been affected in the way that they don't have a father. You know, they don't have that male role model that they should have. They have my brother-in-law, and he's been absolutely amazing, like I've said. But as an actual father,
they're better off without somebody like that in their life, though.
Better off there with him, but missing someone that in a more positive.
So your ex tried to get custody of the kids. Did they actually end up having to go and visit him all the time?
He threatened umpteen times that he would take everything from me. And like I said, I'd lost absolutely everything. I had nothing physical. The last thing I had and the only thing that mattered in the world was my 2 children. And so the last thing he had in his pocket was to take me to court, to child custody. Police tried to put us into witness protection. It was that bad, but they couldn't because I didn't have a family court order. Even if I took the kids, if he wanted them, our system is that the kids go to him. So I went to court and I fought for 3 or 4 years. It finished in 2019 and I finally got 100% custody, which is very, very unheard of. And even my lawyer was amazed that I got 100% custody. The kids have not seen him for 10 years. My son is now 20, so for the last 2 years he legally could have seen his dad if his dad asked to see him, but he hasn't, which,
So you still live in the same area as your ex-husband though, right?
I think that he's living within about 500 metres as the crow flies from me.
And you've never run into him?
I have passed him on occasion in the car, but he either hasn't seen me or he has, and he just gives me a lovely glare just to let me know that he's still there. But other than that, no, he hasn't tried to do anything since he was incarcerated.
So was he incarcerated for what he did to you?
Yes, he was incarcerated for 5 months from the time he broke my second lot of IVOs. Every single day he was doing something to me. He was hacking into my PayPal, my MyGov, my telephone, my emails, my Facebook, changing my Facebook, making up false telephone numbers under my name because he had one of my licenses. So he then used that to make up a Telstra account, and then he would sit there and call me from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in the morning, but it was under my name. So it looked like I was calling myself, even though the police knew that clearly it wasn't. Everything that you could hack into, he hacked into. I remember going to go get petrol and my card declined. And I thought, why is my card declined? And so I said, hold on a second. And I rang up the bank and I said, why is my card declined? And they said, oh, there's been suspicious activity. And I said, what do you mean? They said, a man rang up and said that they were you in a male's voice. And this went to court and everything. And it was in his voice. And he said that he was me. And they went, right. And they shut my account down, but didn't tell me. So I was left at the petrol station with no money, no nothing. And there was a man behind me who said, don't worry, I've got this. And I can remember it was $70, which isn't a lot, but it was a lot to me. And he just went, no, it's all right. And I said, no, but I've got money. He said, no, it's all right. I understand your situation. And I started crying. I lost it. And I got in the car and I asked for his phone number and I rang him then 2 days later when I got everything under control and my bank account back. And he said, no, I don't want your money. And I said, oh, thank you so much. And he just said, just remember to pay it forward. Everything that I had, he just slowly tried to break down and he made it.
That's a real mental domestic violence, right?
Yeah.
because he broke the orders, he went to jail for 5 months, which is rare.
Because he broke the orders and he broke 2 or 3 lots of bail. He was bailed and he was remanded twice. He fraudulated documents. The last thing, and the thing that finally got him to do any time was on a day when he rang up my workplace impersonating a police officer to try and find out where I was, if I was still at work. So he knew how much time I had to get from my work to the kids' school. He then rang up my sister and he broke her IVO and was very irate, saying he doesn't want to go back to jail or anything. He wanted to see the kids and he wanted to talk to me, and my sister told him, you need to calm down, stop this. He then went to the school, he fraudulated the IVO, highlighted out that he couldn't see the kids, and proceeded to show that to the school. They knew what was going on because I'd let them know everything. They then stalled him, got both of our children and hid them in a room in the school, called the police. The police were down there within 5 minutes because he was flagged at every police station because of everything that he'd been doing. And then he proceeded to try to go through the school and tried to find them. And I was with the family violence unit. I was extremely lucky because the family violence unit only takes on about 20 cases at a time. So I was with them, so they ended up getting there within another 15 minutes. And one of the officers just looked at what had been going on and just looked at me and said, "How are you still standing?" And I said, "Well, what option do I have? I've got 2 kids and they need to be safe." They then put us into a safe house that night, and then my police officer from the family violence unit told me that I needed to find somewhere that was safe. I needed to go there, to not tell him, not to tell anyone. The only people that knew was my sister and my mum. And I drove the kids there, which was hours away. My ex actually finally brought himself to the actual police station and sort of handed himself in as such because he had warrants out because they couldn't find him. And he had...
So he left the school. They couldn't keep him at the school.
No.
Imagine how scared the teachers were. They go there to look after your kids and teach them how to do things. They shouldn't have to deal with that sort of stuff either, right?
The teachers, that they were absolutely amazing. And one of them, so when the kids ended up, it was safe, and he was only put into a lot in Middleton. It's called the farm. It's not a
high security.
It's not high security or anything. It's just very low. He was only there for 9 weeks, but that was 9 weeks that I could just breathe, and I didn't have to keep looking in the rear vision mirror.
Yeah.
He'd tried to run me off the road. He'd done a whole heap. He'd lost his licence for trying to run me off the road. But because he pled that it was reckless driving, not careless, then he was downgraded, and he only lost his licence for 6 months.
Oh my God, your story is so incredible. I'm fairly sure there'll be lots of women who will relate to the shit show that you've had to go through, right, at the hands of somebody else.
Unfortunately, there's too many women. I've recently found out by just talking and mentioning Share the Dignity, and then they've told me about their background. And in the last week, I found out 7 women that I didn't know that they had domestic violence pasts, that they've had to leave themselves, that this is their second relationship. And a couple of them, I thought this was their, lifelong partner, and it hasn't been. It's their second. 7 women that that's too many.
It is too many. One woman's too many. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for how brave you are.